This is my 2003 Triumph Bonneville. It's the Hinkley Bonneville, the 790 with carburetors and an oil cooler. Today I'm going to give it a service. That will mean changing the oil filter, the air filter, and changing the plugs. I'm going to attempt it using a basic bike kit that I bought for $9.99, which gives you 3 spanners, a plug spanner, a variable pair of pliers, a screwdriver that is double-ended, and an Allen key, 6mm Allen key. I was bought this for Christmas, so I've got a pair of NGK plugs, the high flow oil filter, the high flow air filter, and the washer for the drain plug, and that came to the grand price of $35.39. I bought 4 litres of 10W40 oil at the reduced price of $39.99, so it's costing me 75 quid to service this bike. Often when you watch service videos they tell you to run the engine to thin the oil. Nowadays high-tech synthetic oil is so thin that really isn't necessary, and as the filter is under there near the pipes, I don't want the pipes hot, and I'm going to change the plugs and I don't want the plugs hot, so I won't be doing that. I will show you a little trick that I learnt along the way though. Also remember that if you run the engine, it then brings all the oil up to cover everything, and then it takes a lot longer to drain to the bottom. So on this bike the drain plug is just there, and then the filter is there. Everything at the moment is covered in dirt because I went out in the wet yesterday, so the first thing I'm going to do is clean that all off before I actually get started. I've given that a good rub down with this cloth and then got in all the nooks and crannies with this brush that you normally use for washing up. These are great because they're soft, they don't damage anything, but they pull out all the dirt and the grime. So it's all nice and clean under there now, so I need to get the catch tray. Normally I use these old baking trays to catch the oil, but I have actually been given a proper oil tray, and it needs to be quite large because when you undo the drain point it spurts forward and I don't want it all over my drive. First snag with this kit, for some reason it has 2 14s and doesn't have a 13, and under there that is a 13, so you need to upgrade this set to have a 13. Not a good start. Before you change the oil on anything, any engine, always make sure you can take out the filler plug, and on this bike it's got a coin turn, so I'm going to have to go and find a coin. So in post-COVID Britain, turns out I haven't got any coins, but what I have got is a piece of this galvanised, and that slit sits in there exactly and it just pops. Once you've undone it, it's a hand turn, and take it out, check it's in good condition, and I'll just leave it there for now. So that was pretty stiff, but just a slight tap and then it loosens, and then you can take it off with your fingers. So laying under it, the sun in your face, is not an ideal situation. I'd certainly reposition this bike if I was doing this again. Come on. Hey, there it goes. That looks quite black. While that's pouring out, I'm going to change the plugs. That should be relatively easy. One thing Bonnie owners know is that the well for the spark plug is very narrow and you can't get an ordinary one here, but this super cheap tinsel one just goes straight on, and then you use the screwdriver to loosen it. I've got a feeling this is going to be a two-handed job. So you can get this out using this. It does take quite a long time because you can only turn it about 1/10 of a turn each time with the screwdriver. Once it's loosened up, obviously you can get it loosened right out. Oh, this is taking ages. It's a bit worrying because last time I took these plugs out they were really easy to get out. There it is out. It's a lovely colour, nice tan colour, looking very good. Now I've proved that you can use this to get them out, but it's very much easier using a thin walled socket and one of these. Now I have the advantage that on my bike the air injector kit has been taken off and blanked off with this plug here. This means that the bike has got a bit more power, it runs cooler, and it doesn't make the pipes go blue. As I've never done this before on this bike, I've looked up the points gap and it is specified as 0.8 to 0.9. So on my little plastic gauge here, 0.8 and 0.9, that corresponds to 31 and 35 thou. That's quite large. I'm used to 25 thou, but I've measured this one here and that is exactly on 0.8, so that's what I'm going to set that one at. And in fact that's already set to 0.8, so I don't need to do anything with that. Just using a cloth to clean the seat before it all gets put back in so I get a good contact. Here's a trick to help keep your engine clean. The last guy who serviced this, he left me with a litre of oil. So if you seal it back up and then pour that litre in there, you can then use it to drag out all the old dirty oil. Otherwise that oil doesn't really have much use other than to go down to the recycling. That now has a litre of clean oil, albeit from a container that was opened over 3 years ago, that I can use to drag out the black oil. But I need to put the black oil in there before I do that because I don't want this spilling over my drive. That's just coming out lovely and clean now. There's no black being dragged out with it at all. So now I've changed the plugs and I've drained out all the old oil, put in some clean oil. I'm going to drain that out again, and while that's draining I'm going to change the air filter, and the air filter is behind this panel, and this panel is secured again with a coin turn, which my little cheap screwdriver happily fits. So I've taken the side panel off, and if you look inside, the dirt does get inside this quite a lot, and I often take these off just to clean them out. I've actually got some spray wax, so I may treat it to that. This is the air scoop and the filter is in there. It's held in with 3 screws. That is the side stand delete. This is for the battery optimizer. These are relays. These are all on rubber stubs, so you need to pull them off out of the way. I didn't film that because I needed both hands, but it's really quite easy. You just lift off the relays off here. This just pops off. There's a little clip here, and then you can pull all of it down here without disconnecting any of it, and then you can get at the 3 screws that holds this in. And I've found that in my kit I have got a 8mm spanner that fits those. This just kind of pops off like that. Twist it out and there's the filter. It's looking a bit desiccated. I haven't made this easy because you have to kind of fight it past the frame. I'm not really impressed with that. That's probably why the frame is all scratched just there. It's not bad looking. This is rather desiccated. That's coming apart, and it's dated there, 6th of January, July, I don't know, 19. So 6 years old now. Just check inside that there's no mice or spiders' webs or mayflies, all the things that love to make their home in your bike. So while that's open, I'm going to give it all a good clean, put some silicone on these rubbers here where they've kind of got all sorts of fly blown things on them. There is actually a cobweb there. Get rid of that. And before it all goes back together, clean it right out. I've noticed that a lot of these old screws are quite rusty, so I'm going to put some rust killer on them, phosphoric acid. Some of them are difficult to get at, so it's not an easy straight replace, but I presume they've been like that ever since they've been on the bike. Get a nice new filter. This is exciting. This is like Christmas, and it looks exactly the same as the one that's come off it. They're not quite the same. This one is dated, This one's got high flow filtro written on it, but there's no date, just a batch number. So I'm actually going to write on here the date so that in the future I'll remember when I did it. Because of the way they've designed this, you have to bang this in really hard, and it does indeed take a lump out the frame. Not very clever. That's all back together, and I've just sprayed it with some silicone lube just to protect all the rubber parts. Just cleaning the inside of this panel with this showroom shine, which gives it a wax coating. And you can see when you buff it up, it comes up lovely and shiny, and it's got a smooth finish which won't hold the dirt. The oil filter is right underneath, and it's classed as hand tight, but unless you're superhuman, there's no way you're undoing that with your hands. Now, traditional method would be to shove the screwdriver into the side of it and use that as a lever until it is undone, but I'm going to short circuit that because I've actually got the proper tool, which is this air filter removal tool, and I paid $9.99 for that. It just makes life so much easier. You can do it with that, you can stab it into the side and rotate it, but it's too cold and I don't want to do that today. That's the replacement filter. It's a high flow. Make sure that you take off the packaging, fill it with oil and oil the seal. Also, when you take the old one out, turn over and make sure that that oil seal is in it, because if that comes out and is stuck in the underside of that bike, that will leak more than a White House Democrat. I've not come across this before, but this is already lubricated and it smells strangely like a cow buyer. I don't know what they've used. Just going to fill the filter up with this 10W40 high-tech semi-synthetic motor oil. I've put the filter on using the correct tool, and I put it onto hand tight plus 1/2 turn. I've noticed on this bike that the filter has a tendency to loosen off after a few hundred miles, so need to keep an eye on that. Going to put the drain plug back in. This is a standard one, it doesn't have a magnet, and it's got a new washer, and I'm just going to tighten that up as hard as I can with my hands using the spanner. So that's it, all done up nice and tight. All I need to do now is put the oil in. Engine Plus filter is 3.8 litres. This is a 4 litre container, and I've marked it off at the bottom at 3.5 litres. For some reason it's measured upside down. Brilliant. So I'll put in that amount and then check the sight glass. The sight glass is not the easiest one to see. It's there, and also they put the marks right up behind it, so it's really hard to line it up. It'd been better if it had just had a line in here somewhere to show you to go into the middle. I put in 3 litres and the level's just up to here, so I really want it in the middle or slightly above, so I'll go to the 3.5 litres that I planned. Ignition on, choke on. Well, I must admit that picked up much quicker than it did yesterday. I'm not going to run it for long, just enough to move the oil around. So the oil level's dropped quite a bit, it's gone right down to there, so I need to put some more in. And I didn't know, when the engine is running, it will scavenge the oil. When you turn the engine off, it returns slowly to the fill point. It hadn't occurred to me that it would do that, but it's now correctly filled. It started really nicely and it's running smoother, so it's obviously done it a lot of good. I ended up putting all 4 litres of oil into it to get it to the right level. And to answer the original question, can you do the servicing with the £10 toolkit? The answer is yes, as long as you've got one that's got a 13mm spanner in it. Otherwise there's not much else you need. Proper tools make a better job though.